What if patterns don't just exist in our mind, but our mind is inside the pattern? And what if that changes everything we think we are choosing? Because most of us move through life with the assumption that we are making conscious decisions, that we are choosing who we connect with, how we respond, and what we allow, what we walk away from. But if we slow down and really look at our lives, something should feel a little bit more complex than that. We meet different people, we enter different situations, we tell ourselves that this time will be different, and yet the emotional experience underneath it all feels strangely familiar. It's not the same story, but it's the same feeling, the same tension, the same uncertainty, the same pull, almost as if something deeper is repeating itself through us, not the events, but the state we experience inside them. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode with me, your host, Ani. Today, we're going into something that is subtle, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Because this isn't just about patterns in theory, this is about the moments where you pause and think, why does this feel so familiar, even though everything looks different? So we see the patterns, we understand it, we even promise ourselves that this time it will be different. I won't repeat it. And yet something still repeats it through us. For example, in romantic relationships, we might notice something confusing. We say we want consistency. We say that we consciously want someone that is emotionally unavailable, and yet we meet someone who is just distant enough, just unpredictable enough to pull us in. And even when we see that, there is still something in us that leans towards it. Or in friendships, it can look different, but feels the same. We say that we want mutual effort, we want that balance in friendship, but we find ourselves over-explaining, over-giving, checking in more than we are checked on, and somehow it feels normal. Or in family dynamics, we set boundaries, we become more aware, but the moment we don't show up in the same way, guess what? Guilt appears. Not because we're doing something wrong, but because something inside us is used to a different role. And even in work environments, we want to be seen, we want to be valued, but before anyone even overlooks us, we minimize ourselves, we hesitate, we hold back, we don't fully express what we know. So basically, it's different contexts, different people, but the same internal movement. And this is where it becomes almost unsettling, because we start to notice it's not just what's happening around us, it's something within us that already knows how to be in this situation. And that creates a very strange feeling. Why does it feel like I am living different experiences, but having the same emotional reality inside them? And this is where the paradox begins. Because now the question is no longer just why is this happening again, but something a bit more deeper. What is it in me that recognizes this so quickly that I end up living it again? In many mystical traditions, there is this shared idea. We do not see reality directly. We see reality through layers of perception. In traditions like Buddhism, this is often described through the idea of illusion, not meaning that nothing is real, but that what we experience as reality is filtered and constructed. And in modern psychology, we describe this in a more scientific way. The brain is constantly predicting reality, building a version of what is expected to see based on past experiences. So when we bring this into our everyday life, something happens. When we meet someone new, we're not only meeting them, we're also meeting what is already active inside us. which means we're not just perceiving the person in front of us, we're perceiving them through the lens of what we have already lived, felt, and learned to recognize. And this is why certain experiences feel the way they do. A calm, emotionally available person, for example, can feel unfamiliar if our system is used to unpredictability, not unsafe, but almost unconvincing, as if something is missing. A stable, grounded friendship can feel less engaging if our emotional baseline was shaped by inconsistency or intensity, because chaos creates stimulation, and the nervous system can confuse stimulation with connection. Consistent, open love can feel suspicious if we are used to earning it in effort, proving, or emotional work once defined connection. Then ease doesn't immediately register as real. It feels unfamiliar. And we start to call this attraction. But this is not just connection, it is recognition. Not recognition of the person themselves, but the recognition of the emotional pattern they activate in us. And because that recognition happens so quickly, so automatically, we rarely question it. It feels very natural, it feels intuitive, it feels like this is just how I feel about them. But beneath that feeling, there's often something older, something learned, something remembered. And this is why relationships can feel so powerful, not just because of who the other person is, but because of what they awaken in us. Not always something new, but something familiar. Now, this is very important. We don't repeat life, we repeat states. And states quietly shape the way we interpret everything we call life. So the loop is not limited to romantic relationships, it appears everywhere. Until we start to notice the emotional pattern underneath it. In friendships, it might look like always becoming the one who listens, who is the one that always holds space, holds hands, the one others lean on, but rarely the one who is actually held in return. And over time, that role starts to feel like identity, not something chosen, but something assigned through repetition. Or in family dynamics, it can look like becoming the responsible one, the emotionally steady one, the one who absorbs tension without naming it, the one who keeps things functioning even internally at their own cost. And even when they grow older and the situation changes, the role quietly follows us into new environments. And in relationships, it often becomes more emotionally charged. We might find ourselves chasing clarity, but repeatedly staying in ambiguity, waiting for consistency while tolerating inconsistency. Not because we do not see it, but because something in us recognizes that. And here's the important part. In the moment, it does not feel like repetition. It feels like reality. It feels like this is just how people are. This is just how things go. This is just my experience. Because we are not consciously choosing the pattern in real time. We are entering emotional familiarity. And emotional familiarity does not announce itself as repetition. It presents itself as normality. And so the loop continues, not because we are unaware, but because what is familiar often arrives faster than what is questioned. We often assume something very logical. If I understand it, I should be able to change it. And on the surface, that makes sense. Awareness should lead to change. Clarity should lead to different choices. But in real life, it doesn't work that way, because understanding something mentally is not the same as being free from it emotionally. So we can see the pattern clearly and still feel pulled into it. For example, we might understand that I do not want emotionally unavailable relationships anymore. We see the signs, we recognize the distance, and still we feel drawn in, still waiting for a message, still hoping it becomes something more, not because we don't know better, but because something in us already knows how to exist in that emotional space. And in friendships, it can look just as subtle. We understand, I don't want to overgive anymore. And yet we find ourselves explaining more than necessary, adjusting to keep the connection, making sure that the other person feels comfortable before we even ask what we need. And this is where the confusion deepens, because awareness is present, but the pattern is still running. So we start questioning ourselves. If I see it, why am I still inside it? Because when we are identified with a pattern, it doesn't feel like a pattern. It feels like us. It feels like instinct. It feels like the truth. It feels like this is just who I am. So even when awareness appears, it appears within the same system it is trying to understand, which means part of us is seeing the pattern while another part of us is still operating inside it. And that is why insight can feel incomplete. Change can feel delayed. Repetition can continue even with awareness. Not because something is blocking us, but because awareness is emerging inside a structure that is still organizing itself around familiarity, still stabilizing itself around what is already known. And that process is not instant. It is very gradual, layered, and at times uncomfortable, because we're not just trying to leave the pattern, we're slowly learning how to see it clearly enough that we're no longer fully defined by it. And then something begins to happen. It is very quiet. It's not something anyone else would necessarily see it, but in the middle of a conversation, in friendship dynamics, romantic moments, in a very familiar emotional reaction, we suddenly pause. And instead of being fully inside that experience, we begin to notice it. We catch something in real time. That this feeling feels very familiar. I've been here emotionally before. Something in me already knows this moment. And that moment is very different, because for the first time, the reaction is not completely automatic. We are still feeling it. The pull is still there. The emotion is still real. But now there is a space. And in that space, something shifts. Not the situation, but our relationship to what is happening inside us, because we are no longer fully inside that pattern. We are outside of it, observing it. Because instead of questioning it, why are we like this and why is this happening to me, etc., we begin to see, what is this activating in me? What part of me already knows how to respond like this? And that shift is the start of everything. The moment we stop trying to change the other person and start seeing the pattern as it unfolds within us, we are no longer completely controlled by it. We are in relationship with it. And in that space, something becomes possible that was not possible before. Choice. That pattern doesn't disappear instantly, but identification with it begins to loosen. We are no longer only the reaction. We are also the awareness noticing it. And that may seem like a small shift, but it is the beginning of something profound, because once we can see the pattern while it is happening, we're no longer fully inside that loop. We're beginning to step outside of it, even if just slightly. And then that slight shift is where everything starts to change. And maybe the most uncomfortable realization is this: we are not just choosing relationships, we're also expressing internal patterns through them, which means what we experience is not only about who we meet, but about what in us is already active, already familiar, already ready to be experienced again. So maybe the question shifts here, not why do I keep meeting the same kind of people, but what kind of emotional reality feels so familiar to me that I continue to live it through different people. And then maybe we are not trying to escape the pattern. Maybe we are the pattern becoming aware of itself. Not something separate from us, not something outside of us, but something moving through us until it is seen clearly enough to no longer run automatically. And relationships are simply the clearest place where this becomes visible, not because they create the pattern, but because they reflect it back to us in motion, in real time, through emotions, through interactions, in a way we can no longer ignore, because we are no longer only living the pattern, we are witnessing it. And that is where everything begins to change. So, my lovelies, thank you for being here and thank you for going into this with me. I know that these are not easy things to look at, but they are some of the most important. If this episode resonated with you, if something clicked in you, or even it made you pause and reflect, take a moment to share your thoughts with me. I really appreciate them and I really want to hear from you. And if you're ready to go deeper into the mind, perception, and consciousness, stay with me. Until next time, stay bold, stay fierce, and always go beyond the mind.